Hello, everybody. My name is Dave Zapponi. I'm the CEO of ECHO, otherwise known as the Educational Council of Homeowners. I want to thank you all for participating in our current community conversation, all things paving. ECHO is a 51-year-old statewide nonprofit association established to support HOA board members and engaged homeowners. Our mission is to foster a better quality of life in community associations through education, advocacy, and connections. For today's event, we have a few housekeeping items. These are now presented on your screen. This slide deck was sent to all registered attendees prior to today's webinar. Please take a moment and review our housekeeping items. Today, we have a large audience of HOA board members. We will do our best to answer your questions, but we may run out of time. At the prerogative of the presenter, Rick will or may answer one or two questions during the presentation, but I think he prefers to wait until the Q&A session after the presentations. In addition to the live Q&A session, I will be answering questions via text in the Q&A feature during the presentation. And to prioritize your questions, please use the thumbs up icon, the little thumbs up in your box. Those questions with the most thumbs up or upvotes will be answered first. Those questions with the most thumbs up will likely be chosen first. If they're really long, we may pass on those. So please keep your questions general and short in nature. We may pass over some of these. Specific questions about your community are best asked of your expert or your attorney for the appropriate advice for your specific situation. Please use the chat feature to report any technical issues you might have and to communicate directly with other participants in the webinar. We do not monitor the chat room conversations or questions. Now let me direct your attention to your monitor, where you will find our disclaimer. None of what is said during this seminar shall be construed as specific legal or expert advice from the speaker, sponsors, or ECHO. If you wish specific advice, we encourage you to contact your attorney or another suitable expert. The information we provide during this webinar is educational in nature and should not be relied upon for specific decision-making purposes. Thank you. This webinar, as well as all of our events, are made possible by the generous contributions of our ECHO HOA professional service providers. Join me in thanking today's program sponsor, BTC Bob Tedrick Construction, Inc., and our registration sponsor, Levy Erlinger and Company, LLC, CPAs, and today's gift card sponsor, CM Squared. Please stick around till the end of the webinar to win for a chance to win this $50 Amazon gift card. We'll be doing the drawing. You must be present to win. And I believe Connor has a video to play for us.
Integrity, quality, and service. These are the key principles that my company was founded on that drive our business in serving families like yours. My name is Bob Tedrick. I'm the president and founder of BTC, Bob Tedrick Construction, specializing in single-family residential remodels, commercial tenant improvements, and multifamily HOA and apartment community properties. We do 90% of our work using our own in-house employees. Look, we love this community. We're Livermore local, family owned and operated since 2008. When you work with us, you're family.
So BTC Inc., someone you want to talk to about construction projects or reconstruction projects. Please support all our ECHO professional members and especially our sponsors. They make our educational programming possible at little or no cost to you. And now a bit about today's presenter. Rick Shively has lived in Northern California since 1972. He started RPS in 2012 after working on paving crews from 1979 to 1990, then working as an estimator paver director from 1994 to 2012. Rick's purpose is starting RPS was to increase accountability, integrity, and competency for private projects by building a transparent win-win-win culture. He wants owners, managers, and vendors to feel like this was the smoothest possible way to run a paving project. And now I'll turn it over to Rick to begin his presentation. Thank you all. I'm Dave Zapponi. Rick?
Thank you very much, Dave and Connor and all of Echo for this opportunity to be able to speak with you today. I really appreciate that. And also to all of the board members who've decided to join us in this discussion today, all things paving. And I'm going to kind of start it out by asking a question. How do you plan for a smooth paving project? We can go to the next slide, Connor. And in asking the question, how do you prepare and plan for a smooth paving project, I thought it might be interesting to start at the beginning and review some conditions that you might see in your asphalt that should cause some concern and should bring your attention to. So what are these conditions of asphalt damage that need attention, and why? Number one, I want to talk about sinking or sinking displaced and shove displaced asphalt. So in a moment, we're going to turn to the next picture and see a picture of it, but I just want to describe it first. This can be subtle because you could have an area 4-6 feet wide and sunken 1 to 1.5 inches, and to an untrained eye, you may not catch that. Secondly, most of the time, anything that's sinking or shoving displaced up or down is a major concern because it more than likely includes sub-base failure. Let's go to the next slide for pictures. So the picture on the top left is a actual project in Northern California where our assessment noticed that the asphalt had sunken 1.5 to 2 inches below the top of the catch basin. So in the winter, 1.5 to 2 inches of puddling would occur, and that water would just sit on the surface, soak into the ground under the asphalt through the joint between the asphalt and the catch basin, and then eventually fill up high enough to go down the storm system. So that was very subtle. It wasn't, other than the immediate small trip hazard, it wasn't showing itself much on the surface, but it was sinking at the same time. So that was a sub-base problem. On the right-hand side, it's very common. It's shoving. The 2 zeros that you see in the bottom right picture are areas where the asphalt was actually shoved higher by the depression in the middle between them. So it was a roadway that was not built for the level of traffic or the weight of traffic, the amount of traffic that was using the road. And as you can see, it's a fairly narrow road. So the travel point is exactly in the same spot for tires every day. So this rutting or shoving up and down is also a concern that the sub-base or the base that's under the road was not sufficiently built. It was not structurally built strong enough to hold the load of the road. So let's go to the next slide, look at another type. Another condition is potholing. And of course, nobody wants potholes. And they are a warning to you that you have possibly waited too long to be able to efficiently maintain the pavement. And what I mean by that is the cost of fixing sub-base or base with the asphalt increases significantly what the square foot cost of your pavement maintenance project will be, unless the contractor that you hire doesn't address those things, which is very common. But potholes, again, are an isolated location of sub-base failure. And next slide, we'll see a couple of examples. Here's an area where very obviously, very specific areas had collapsed and started sinking into the ground. What happens with asphalt is once it cracks and displaces, then water the water starts increasing the amount of, the rain starts increasing the amount of water that can penetrate the base. Once the base is soft with water, then it starts moving, and that allows water to penetrate the base and literally get into the subbase. And at that point, the native soils in this road are not handling the amount of water. You can also see that this road has been neglected quite completely. So it's also a part of what's causing these potholes. Next slide, please. Okay, maybe one of the more common failures, conditions of asphalt that need attention it's referred to as alligator cracking, and it's called alligator cracking because if you look at the pattern in the next slide that we'll turn to in a moment, if you look at the pattern of the cracking, it looks like the scales of an alligator, and so it's called alligator cracking. Something to know about alligator cracking is it's clear evidence of structural failure of the pavement, of the asphalt. It is also, it can be caused also by simply age. Asphalt has a life expectancy. I would say it used to have a life expectancy of 40 years. I would say the high end of our current grade quality of asphalt is only 30 years, and that might be reducing. We can get to that in a little bit. But also another cause of alligator cracking is the base might be soft and moving. Whoops, there's a typo there, but also the subbase could be moving. Regardless, alligator cracking these areas of failure, since they're structurally failed, should be replaced before any or other all pavement preservation efforts, before you seal coat, before you slurry seal, before you would even overlay your asphalt. You should not overlay over alligator damaged asphalt because the monies you're spending on the seal coat, slurry seal, or overlay paving is going to be the cost that you paid for those surfaces will have a reduced life expectancy with structural failure underneath them. So you may pay for a seal coat project, which is one of the least expensive things to do to asphalt to preserve it. But seal coat should last, if it's done right, between 5 to 7 years. Common statement is 3 to 5, but I've experienced a scope and a specification that will enable seal coat to last 5 to 7, sometimes even up to 8 years. So if you're going to seal coat over alligator cracking and the life expectancy of those areas is only 3 more years, that means you paid for seal coat that you're just simply going to dig up when you start doing repairs. So it's an ineffective, I call it a waste of these kinds of monies on surfacing over alligator cracking. Next page so we can see the pictures. And these are 2 conditions. This is just 2 examples, and believe me, you could almost take these same 2 pictures and put them on 2 different properties that now have a different base and different subbase under them, and the life expectancy or my description right now may change based on the ground underneath, not what you see on the surface. So don't let the surface deceive you. The area on the left is an alligator cracking, but if I pulled a string line from the right side of that picture to the left side of the picture down on the ground, you would see that the area in the middle is rutting and that there is a 1 to 1.5 inch depression. The area on the right actually looks like a bigger, more complicated, more cracking going on, but it is more stable than the picture on the left. So the picture on the right, you'll notice it actually was seal coated. If you can see some of the details down in the bottom and left corner of the picture, that area actually was seal coated with alligator cracking, but the base was found to be so stable that it is running near, not perfectly, but near its life expectancy, where the area on the left certainly would not. That is going to be a pothole in one more winter, in my estimation. So those are examples of alligator cracking. Having an expert that can read those cracks and decipher between those cracks and know how to understand what base is underneath and takes the time to check what base is underneath is a critical component to whether or not alligator cracking should be addressed this year, next year, 3 years, 5 years, or there's many choices. Let's go to the next slide, please. Another example is and we are actually, I should have said this in the beginning, my apologies, but we're kind of going from the most severe conditions to the least severe conditions. So before alligator cracking happens that we just spoke about, you get large block cracking to medium block cracking, and that's simply referring to the size. Let's turn to the next page and I'll just discuss that. So the next page here is an example in a parking lot. I believe this is a McDonald's parking lot, actually. And the two arrows point to two different sizes of blocks. If you see them, the right arrow is a medium block crack. The bottom arrow pointing straight down is the larger block. It's just simply referring to the physical measurement of the size of the block cracking that you can see. This is the stage before alligator cracking. This is the stage, depending upon how many cracks, this is quite severe, but this asphalt is starting to structurally fail, but it is not structurally failed. So in my view, this condition here is still maintainable because I can hold and or slow down that level of damage for 5 to 7 years. So I would never want to tell you to replace that asphalt because I can still maintain it with the least expensive maintenance plan there is, which is seal coat, crack fill and seal coat. I can still maintain this parking lot, especially in the parking stalls, for at least 5 to 7 years. And actually, this parking lot specifically had even larger cracks, maybe not as many, but larger cracks down the driveway. And we were able to design a specification that allowed those cracks to be sealed and crack filled and seal coated. And we are currently in this parking lot. This was actually done. This is before picture, but this was done 4 years ago. And it looks like we are going to hit the 7-year mark. And the only thing we will do at the 7th year is try to convince the owner to remove and replace the driveway and leave these cracks that you see here for another 5 to 7 year period. So if caught at the right time, before alligator cracking, and maintained well, you can take that condition right there, at least on this property, and maintain it for up to 14 years of more useful life, where typically in a reserve study, I think that condition would start being called out for a future replacement in a shorter period of time. So the key here is finding someone who really understands the roads and the parking lots and the life expectancy that each condition of failure presents or not. Let's go to the next slide, please. Cracking. So I just showed you some cracking. It was block cracking, but I did want to mention on this page that there are all kinds of cracks. There are fatigue cracks, there are longitudinal cracks, there are horizontal cracks, there's mirror cracking, which I'll mention just for right now. Mirror cracking is when a asphalt parking lot or a road has original asphalt, and before it structurally fails, they put another layer of asphalt, not seal coat, but another layer, 1, 2, 3 inches of asphalt over the existing asphalt. But the cracks from the bottom layer mirror through the top layer, unless you do something about that and slow that process down. Those mirror cracks can happen in less than 5 years. So there's a lot of details, a lot of concerns around cracks, and understanding what type of crack causes mirror cracking is really important. There are also paving joint cracks, grade break cracks, and simply cracking from settling. And there are even more, but not to go through too many of you. I think the point here from me to each of you is I'm trying to create a picture where the importance of a smooth paving project is finding someone who actually knows paving. And I'm going to get to that more in just a few minutes. I'll come back to that. Obviously, there's normal wear and tear, there's fatigue cracks, there's weak points. You know, every square foot of your property is not the same strength. So having an expert that can differentiate between all of these cracks, what are the causes, and what's the overall best plan, really starts to become important. And really, so what I'm describing is everything that happens before the project. Why are you going to do what you do? How are you going to do it? And how long is it going to last? Those three questions, of course, along with the cost, are the combination of how to get a smooth paving project. Let's go to the next slide. So I have this picture in here because I want to kind of now move away from conditions of asphalt paving, although this is another one. But I want to talk about what's happening here, why. It's the why behind some damage. Cracks are inevitable, yes, but poor workmanship, quite honestly, rip-off workmanship, should never happen. This picture is an explicit example of workmanship, of a workmanship ripoff. And what I mean by this is, I was describing a few moments ago, you have original layer of asphalt, and if you catch it at the right time and you have the right reason, there's a reason to put another layer of asphalt over the top of the existing asphalt. It's called overlay paving. It extends the life of your road, sometimes up to 20 more years, at about 40% of the cost of replacing it. So 40, 50, can be 60, but it's still going to extend your life up to 20 more years. This overlay, however, as you can see, was done with less than a 1/4 inch of asphalt over the top of the bottom layer. You can physically see it there. The minimum specification for an overlay is 1.5 inches, and this project was done literally with less than 1/2 inch. So whoever did this overlay on this project underpaved, saved all kinds of asphalt, and did not install it at the minimum specification for doing an overlay. So who and how are projects being, who's verifying projects, and how are your projects being verified? I want to raise that point and go to the next slide, please. Number one is, I want to kind of shift gears here now and talk about the need for a professional. I did start this company 12 years ago specifically because I was kind of running into a common thread, and that is that picture that we saw before was probably happening on about 40 to 50% of the projects that I would go evaluate. And I realized that the industry was lacking accountability, especially on private paving work. Now, if you go to the city street and the work that happens out there, they have natural inspections built in. But on private paving, that's not the case. So here's my statement. The number one cause of short life expectancy is all connected to the quality and the level of the disclosures in your written scope of work. So my suggestion is, you do need an independent person to help you write a specification that the contractors will have to bid to. And it's changing the way the industry works. Right now, it's common to go to the contractors and ask them, what should they do? What would they suggest you do? I mean, but I think it would be better if we did it the other way around. And I'm trying to prove that it's better that way, because you have a single scope, a single specification, and you simply need contractors who are willing and able to bid to somebody's written scope on your behalf. 80% of the persons that come out, here's an interesting issue in the San Francisco Bay Area, at least 80% of the persons that evaluate parking lots have never worked on a paving crew. So my question is, how do they know how to tell you what to do if they've never worked on a paving crew? I, for instance, have come from 15 years of working on paving crews, and then I learned about estimating and so on and so forth. It's interesting that really we have persons who come out and they've learned the lingo and they have some knowledge, and I'm not saying they can't learn knowledge without being on the paving crew, but you can't get an education in how to install a road. The only thing you can do is get experience, how to install a road. And how you install a road teaches you a lot about how does that road last. And so I'm afraid that the project managers, as the title has become common to use in the last 20 years, are really just account managers. They're business development persons, and they're not asphalt experts. They've learned language. They've learned to recognize the same things I'm showing you today. But I think it's important that we consider the idea of starting with a professional. Let's go to the next slide, please. Second, how do you write an RFP? Well, you need to know the options. You need to know how many options there are. Like, when do you fully or partially replace? And do you go full depth all the way down to the bottom? And why? When do you mill and fill? Partial depth. Mill and fill paving is really a brand new thing. Last 10 years, well, maybe 15. Since they have the grinding machines, the milling machines, and the cities who've done overlay over overlay over overlay, their roads are so thick now that they can't afford to go all the way down, recompact the base, start over, reestablish everything, and go back up. It's too expensive. So now mill and fill paving has become really popular. Well, now that the cities are doing it, so are private paving companies doing it. And they're telling you to go down 2 inches in your 4-inch asphalt and then pave right over the top. So the question is, when is that a good idea, or when is it better to go full depth? And what's the cost difference? And what's the life expectancy by doing what you do? Another question is, when do you fully or partially overlay asphalt? I've mentioned the overlays before. Overlay is a great, great feature. And most of your reserve analyst companies are going to put the overlay feature in your reserve in your reserves as they figure out how much your dues are going to be. However, the analysts don't know whether your property can be overlaid or not. They just simply know that that's one of the features that happens. And what you really need is an expert to come out and tell you, do you even need that line item in your reserves? Because based on slopes and based on angles and elevations, the overlay feature is not even possible in some situations. So how do you write an RFP with all these questions? Do you ask 3 contractors who will give you 3 different ideas and let them bid that? That's a tough way for you to become educated enough that you can make a great decision in many cases. Another question is, when do you crack seal or seal coat or slurry seal or cape seal? There's many other coatings these days, and even rubber tire modified surface sealer is becoming a really popular one. I was talking earlier to Connor about that, and that rubber modified surface sealer is maybe lasting 2 or 3 times as long as the seal coat, but the cost is a lot more. So there's questions about which options. Let's go to the next slide. Typically, when you write a request for proposal, most board of directors are asking their community manager to go get 3 qualified bids. The problem that I see with the current bid system is if you go get 3 bids and you don't have an expert helping you tell the contractors what to bid, then you rely on the contractors telling you, and every contractor has a different opinion. Also, even if, like, let me start at the top here. It says, my claim is 3 bids aren't actually 3 bids. It's actually 1 bid for each scope. And because if you just ask them each to tell you what they think you should do, you do have 3 different ideas. You do have the ability to dig in and ask questions and all of that, interview them. But as a non-expert in most cases, 95% of the time, those bids may seem equal, but the apples to apples level is not actually there. And I can tell you that as a person who gathers bids all the time, we have to qualify, even from an expert point of view, to even know if these bids are apples to apples, because kind of the second down drop point, you can probably get that to be about 75% of the time. But understand this, each company does the same thing differently. And I'll give you one example. 3 inches of asphalt, let's say they tell you that they're going to do a 3-inch paving project for you. 3 inches to one contractor is 3 3/4 to another. The reason why is 3 inches to one contractor is speaking of the compacted depth, and 3 3/4 inches is speaking of the installed depth. They install it at 3 3/4 and they compact it to 3 inches. Another item that comes up that's not even on this page is they'll tell you they're going to do a 4-inch remove and replace. What they actually mean by that is if there are 4 inches of asphalt on your road, when they dig down, if they only find 3, they stop and they tell you, well, we don't want to take out the base. We're going to go down 3 and up 3, but they bid it for 4. But that's a common practice. The other idea is maybe they do tell you 3 inches, but they actually don't mean 3 inches compacted. They mean they're going to install 3 inches, which would compact to 2 1/4 inches. So if they're not telling you things like, if they use phrases like up to 4 inches, or we will install 3 inches, but they don't use the term 3 compacted inches, those are some of the details that can be changing the exact same written scope. And that's why I'm saying that there's a real need in writing RFPs for someone to bring out the details. My suggestion also is that you don't just get 3 bids, you get more like 4 to 8. That practice is a little frustrating for the contractors, but they adjust because they realize that that's in your best interest. And that's one thing that we try to do in creating the win-win-win in an RFP, is being able to give you the win-win-win. Let's go to the next slide, please. Basically, the details matter. I'm probably not going to go through everything on this page just because of time. I don't want to go too fast. I don't want to miss too much, but here's a question. Do you really need a construction manager, a consultant for paving projects? How about seal coat projects? Well, it's interesting that if you look at them in the middle of that seal coat, it says, my questions are, seal coat, how much water are they going to add? How much sand are they going to add? How much latex are they adding? Is there 2 coats going to be edge to edge on both coats, or are they only going to seal the driveway on the second coat? Are they going to use brooms or squeegees? Are they going to use a squeegee machine or hand applied? Are they going to spray on the seal coat? How much dry time, how much cure time between the coats are they going to plan on? If all of those details aren't in a seal coat project, here's what I find. They all write this very, very generic, 2 coats of seal coat, restripe, and it's just kind of written very plain. None of these details are in there, by the way, on almost all bids from contractors. Not all, but almost all. But the bottom line is, what I've seen is seal coat can last 40 to 50% longer than the typical life expectancy of 3 to 5 years, because with the right spec, we're seeing projects last 7 to 8 years. So you can gain 40 to 50% life expectancy simply by making sure those details are delineated in the scope. Yet the bids are maybe 5 to 10 to 15% different in cost. So you can see that the specification and the life expectancy that you're going to get is a far greater issue than the cost you're going to pay. And that's the importance of why details matter. Let's go to the next page. Another part of using an expert, independent consultant in construction management company, and specific for asphalt and concrete, by the way, not a general building contractor, but a asphalt and concrete specific consultant. Remember that they, how do you, like in answering the question, how do you find and select a paving contractor? Well, using an independent agent who works with them all the time is the best way to get one. Paving contractors all have different strengths and weaknesses. Yes, you can vet them by seeing some examples. Yes, you can vet them by their state contractor's license, their insurance. You can ask, you could even ask their project manager, hey, do you have any personal paving experience? You could ask them for references. However, all of them can produce a few good references, and vet them by asking who will be on site, who will be on site doing a scope verification. So going back to the apples to apples idea, it's all about the scope. It's all about the bid specifications. But if you don't have anyone on site checking and verifying, then your 4-inch paving job can become 3 at the decision of the crew, rather than having somebody there on site doing a verification and saying, hey, no, we are removing 1 inch of base also on this project. And they might hem and haw and say, well, the asphalt plant doesn't take that. And believe me, they'll adjust when they know somebody's there who knows what they're talking about, because every inch of asphalt versus base that we replace, let's say you have 3 inches existing, but the quote was 4. We remove 1 inch of base, off haul that also, and put 4 inches of asphalt in, because every inch of base that I replace with asphalt increases the strength of the road 50% of the life of 1 inch. So it's like installing 1.5 inches of base by replacing it with 1 inch of asphalt. So it is a way to strengthen an old road by simply removing some of the base. Let's go to the next slide, please.
Hey, Rick, could you quickly tell us what mill and fill means?
Mill and fill. So if your asphalt is 4 inches deep, mill means that you use a grinder and you strip off only the top 2 inches. So you're leaving the 2 inches of old asphalt on the bottom. You strip off the top, you mill it off, grind it off, and then you pave it back. But that means you're placing 2 inches of good asphalt over 2 inches of bad asphalt, or at least 2 inches of old asphalt. So that's what mill and fill means. It's a partial depth with a milling machine repair process. Okay. Site verifications and inspections during the job. I cannot express to you how important this is. Without someone doing that, the door is open for on-site changes. And that's done by the crew. I worked on crews, and believe me, when I went out on crews, the only training that we were given was whatever the foreman said. The foreman was the one deciding what to do. Well, if you don't have an independent inspector or verification process on the job, what if they make a decision to not go down 4 inches? You've paid for 4 inches, but they're only going to go down 3 or even 3.5. Bottom line is, you've paid for it. You ought to get it, because the life expectancy is going to decrease if it's not installed correctly. I would also say this, that jobs are lost and won based on too few descriptions. In other words, the details matter. Remember all the questions I was asking about seal coat. I've never seen a contractor write what percentage of water they're going to dilute the seal coat with before they install it. That is a mistake. That is an ability for them to cut corners, because are they going to add 10% or 50% water before they install your seal coat? That will directly affect how long your seal coat lasts. Many people complain about seal coat because they don't feel like it's very good quality. Well, it's not really the seal coat, it's the contractor that's installing it. Or maybe it's not even the contractor. Maybe the contractor, quote unquote, themselves really want to do it well, but that crew is just not doing it that way today. Contractors make mistakes. Your independent inspection agent can help prevent that, help prevent from cutting corners. Concrete jobs, and we haven't really talked much about concrete today, but if you use a lesser PSI strength concrete, then that can increase the cracking pace and reduce the life expectancy. On asphalt, I have mentioned saving 1 inch of asphalt on a 4-inch asphalt installation is, by the way, I haven't mentioned this part, a direct 10 to 15% savings to the contractor. That's how much impact asphalt material costs are on a paving project. Seal coat jobs, again, I've mentioned this. Too much water, no sand, no latex, not every square foot covered on the second coat. All of these issues can reduce the life expectancy of seal coat by 40 to 50%. So I'm just trying to help generally, quickly, apologize for all that, set some standards. We've got only about 5 minutes left. So let's go to the next slide. When does a pavement project require a construction management company, and why? I have dipped into this just a little bit. I believe large jobs are obvious. That's the most common call we get, is on large jobs, because the cost is high. Everybody, if they stop and think about it, realize that ultimately, once you hire a contractor, there is no inspection, there is no verification, there is no third-party member. So there's really no one looking out for you in real time. And so large jobs, I think everybody understands that. Small jobs, however, is a different story. It's like, oh, it's only seal coat. Well, I've already gone through a little bit about that. You're talking about 40 to 50% life expectancy difference simply by making sure that there's a bid spec set and that the crew is following it. Believe me, it's very, very difficult, even within a construction management setting, to get a contractor to change the way they always do it. Because I've had to fight for 3 to 5 years to get some contractors to not have to call the office, tell them they're not hitting the spec, get the crew to go back out and not back out, stay out and put down another coat, because they haven't met the specification. It's a very difficult process, but it can be done. I think all jobs, because are good to use a construction management company for your paving project, for your life expectancy, for the quality of what you're paying for, because a good construction management company who can specialize knows all the paving companies and which of them is suited better for your project. You know, if you just get 3 bids from your management company, they don't have time to get to know all and entertain bids from all the paving contractors. They're going to get their 3. What if those 3 aren't the best contractors in your area suited to do your job? It's like picking the contractors from who you know rather than who does what well. And that's what a construction manager can do for you, is they can pick the correct contractor to even be bidding on your job. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so that ends the details. Let me just use a couple more minutes, and then I'm sure Dave will be ready to help us field some questions here soon. The bottom line is, what I've seen in the industry is that accountability and competency and integrity really, really matter. And what I'm hoping to do in the industry and in your presentation today is to help you understand that having an agent who knows paving on your project, before the project, designing and bidding it, during the bidding process, reviewing those bids with you, during the project, actually being in charge of the project, during the project, checking the specifications and sending updates to you every day of any project, exactly what's happening by picture evidence. Those things are far more important today than they've ever been. One of the main reasons why is because, I'll give you this example from 1979 when I walked onto a paving crew for the very first time. I was the only new guy on the 10-man paving crew. Today, if you go to just about every paving company and ask that crew, how long have you been paving? You would find out of 10, 3 to 5 have good experience. The rest of the crew are being told what to do. They are new. They're trying it out this season. The depth of experience per man, per crew, has significantly reduced in the last 30 years. Therefore, the need for inspections and verifications has risen at the same pace. And I think that insight right there is one of the things that will help you get set up to have a smooth paving project by getting the details that you need and moving from a 3-bid system to a multi-bid system through an expert. And that is what I believe would make the biggest difference in pavement. Hopefully I've given you a good education about asphalt, about seal coat, about projects, and also helped you understand that the inspections and verifications are highly important. Dave, okay. I think that's all I've got for right here.
That sounds good. So we're going to go into the question and answer segment. We've got quite a bit of time for these, and we have a lot of questions. So that's good. A couple things I'd like you to remember and just recall is the use of the upvote feature. That's the thumbs up icon in your screen, on your screen in the question and answer moderator box. Use that to pick your favorite question. So we'll let you go through there and really find your favorite questions. I'm going to start reviewing some of those and give you a little time to go ahead and put that in and do your voting right now. If you can take a look at some of your questions, please do that. Rick, if you want to follow along, it's in the upper right-hand corner. There's a little caret, they call it, and you can hit that and click on most upvotes if you're interested in tracking that. Right now, it should be probably on most recents, so it should go to most upvotes. The other thing I'm going to ask, this is kind of off the cuff, but of the attendees, these are kind of interesting, and I thought this was a really interesting presentation, Rick, and very valuable to those of us that have asphalt issues. If you, one of the listeners, if you could put into the chat other areas that you'd like to have experts discuss, project managers discuss, that so that we can build content based on what you're interested in, that would be helpful. We have several, and we're going to start planning for 2025. We have a couple left in this year. So please go ahead and put something in there. I think we're going to do a painting one later in the fall, but I know we're getting into the budgeting process. I want to make sure that you all have a chance to do that. So let's go ahead and take a look at the most upvotes. And with 6, Theo asks, do you as an asphalt company also repair concrete valley gutters, or should a concrete company be considered for that, or someone else? I know we use a landscaper to do that. So,
yeah. So very, very good question. Just to be specific, I am a asphalt and concrete consultant, so I don't have the crews, but I will answer that as one of them. And what I mean by that is this: I would say about 70% of the asphalt paving companies out there have their own in-house concrete crew. So what you want to ask is, do you do the work 100% in-house if you do concrete for us? If they do it in-house, then no problem. It's the same license, it's the same style of work, it's the same, it's very common. So most companies who start asphalt only end up doing concrete, and most companies who start out concrete only, some of them start doing asphalt because it's a different beast. It's harder to go over to asphalt than it is over to concrete. So as long as they do it in-house, you really, really want to know that, and that's a very important factor, and that's how I would answer that question, at least at this point.
That sounds good. Thank you. That was a good answer. So Kay Dyack asked, does your company do project management work?
So yes, our company is consulting and project management. It's all kind of a package. And basically, the state of California requires a consultant to have a contractor's license. So I'm fully set up like a contractor, insurance, everything. I just don't do the installation. My goal is to define scopes, bid that scope out, and manage the project. And I actually have morphed into my insurance would highly require that I design, bid, and manage, because I have professional liability insurance as a consultant also. So the design is covered, the actual scope is covered by insurance. So yeah, typically if you get an expert, you want an expert who can do all of that. You want one person in charge of the entire process. That's where accountability comes from.
Okay, so that sounds good. Dee Dee asks, are there any, oops, I lost her real quick. For mobile home parks, is there a certain level of asphalt that's used in mobile home parks?
So mobile home parks are very similarly built almost all of the time. They're heavily crowned in the middle, and the asphalt, the water, I mean, goes to the sides in both directions of the road rather than slope. That's a good design for a road because it keeps the ground underneath the asphalt driest. I'm sorry, can you repeat that question and make sure that I get the detail there?
She's asking about the level of asphalt.
Yeah, the level. So the level, I mean, the thickness, basically if your if your roadway, regardless of whether it's mobile home park or apartment or HOA or whatever, if your roadway has trash trucks driving on it, the minimum amount of asphalt that should be on that road is 4 inches. And the minimum amount of base rock that should be under that asphalt is 12 inches. I would say 50% of the roads everywhere throughout the state of California are under that originally, because trash trucks didn't used to exist. So if we build a brand new road, 4 on 12 is the minimum for a trash truck driven roadway. Hopefully that helps a little bit for that answer.
Okay, and okay, our anonymous attendee, we get good questions from Mr. Anonymous. Do you have videos of this for your for our other directors?
Videos of this presentation?
Well, we have this presentation, so everybody's going to be getting this presentation. I think it's of well, maybe she can put it in, or he or she can put it in the chat, and we can.
I think they're asking if this was recorded.
Yeah, so this is recorded, and so everybody will be getting it.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so Mr. or Miss Louis, for seal coating, what is the ideal percentage of water, sand, and latex mix?
So yeah, that's interesting. I guess I'll give you some of my expertise out there. The manufacturer, based on which product they use, is all going to vary slightly. Generally speaking, you do not want more than 10 to 12% water. Generally speaking, you want not less than 2% latex. And the amount of sand varies completely depending upon how rough the surface actually is. And it's interesting to teach someone to notice, how rough is my road really? And it's like you have to get down there like an ant and imagine walking on the road as an ant. Are there peaks and valleys, or are the valleys all filled in and smooth? If it's the more rough the road, the more the sand that's added. And I would say, I don't know of 1 out of 10 companies that add sand without being told.
Okay.
And I would say it's the key for life expectancy.
Okay, and so the next question here, so we'll go ahead and kick to the next one. I'm going to make this a little more general because he's asking specifically what your fee structure is. But if you have a manager, a contract manager, or consultant like you, how are what can you expect the fees to be, and can you maybe talk a little bit about cost benefit of having someone like that?
Yeah. So the cost of using construction management on a project should be should be the range of about 7.5% of the job up to about as high as 15%. It really, smaller jobs can be more expensive. So in those cases, there's a way to adjust to that too, because you can simply reduce services and not be that expensive. But the bigger the project, the easier it is to drop the rate. But you should be similar to any general, like if you went to a general building contractor and had them, they're gonna remodel your home. They're gonna get their sub installers and they're gonna mark them up 10%. 10% is the general hit for construction management. That's probably the best way to answer that.
And what's the cost benefit?
So the cost benefit is, remember what I was saying about even something as a seal coat job. If you have to pay me 10 to even 15% over your seal coat job, but I'm gaining you 40% life expectancy by historical evidence, I've not only not cost you anything, I've saved you money.
Okay. All right, so there's your answer. Anonymous attendee, does the construction management company write the RFP for HOAs?
Yes.
Okay.
That's I probably didn't use that term, my bad, but RFPs, request for proposal, that was kind of what I was talking around much of the whole time today. It was like, yeah, you need somebody write the scope and specifications. That's the other way to refer to a RFP.
Well, I think you mentioned in your opening remarks that, or at least in your introduction, that you're trying to strike a balance. So I assume the board would be pretty heavily involved with the writing of that RFP, or at least would be involved with it.
Yeah, yeah, and there's lots of very formal ways and there's very informal ways. So yeah, the goal of the construction manager and consultant is to work with the board and be the board's rep. I mean, we're the eyes on the job, and so we want to create it like you need it.
Okay, sounds good. So Roxanne, I can always depend on you for asking a really good question. She asked about change orders. What's an acceptable change order? How do you handle change orders in this business?
So from a construction manager point of view, a change order means I probably didn't detail the job very well. The history that I've experienced is change orders only happen about 3% of the time in pavement maintenance. The reason change orders happen more often than that without a construction manager is, to give you one detail I didn't bring up, a construction management company is going to go out and core drill the existing asphalt. So we're not guessing at how deep your asphalt is, we know. And if the base that we find underneath that is of questionable source, because there are some, then we also dig potholes and figure out how deep and what quality that is. So like one of the line items, I still put it in an RFP when I write it, is if the base is unsuitable for compaction, well, that's one that you can't really know till you open up the ground. So there is a reasonable 2 to 3% of the time where the unsuitable base that's under the asphalt really isn't suitable for base, and so the cracking on the top didn't give any indication, and we do have to have a change order. But I'd be really leery of change orders on pavement maintenance. It just is avoidable.
Okay, well, that's a really interesting answer. All right, so let's go to Michael Williams here. How to begin? Where do you begin with this cost of hiring a management company, consultants? Where can you find those? Well, obviously, Echo has a directory, and you can always look in there for construction managers. And of course, Rick is also in that directory, so you can find him there. Make sure you get people lined up on board with this at your HOA. Your board needs to be on top of this. And I know we have at least one person that's on this call or this webinar that they have an asphalt committee, and that it's so important to them that they actually formed a committee for that. Do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I've worked with asphalt committees. That's really interesting because some have spent, wow, just impressive amounts of time getting to know pavement and such. But yeah, that's about it. It's that's about all that I connect with there.
Mm-hmm. Does a consultant generally look at the short run or the long run? Or, I mean, designing, we have these reserve studies that we have to start worrying about a lot more.
Great question.
We have a lot of older communities. Is it often the case where you get a project manager or construction manager that sticks with you for a while and maybe designs a program over 5 or 10 or even 30 years for the reserve study?
Yep. I am probably doing 30-year analyses maybe 3 to 5 times a year right now. I do 10 years, probably 20 times a year right now. Obviously, the farther out that analysis goes, the less accurate it is. However, it is significantly more accurate to do it based on an evaluation of your property with a pavement maintenance expert. And I'm sorry, something's coming up here. It's so much easier to be accurate if I'm doing 1 to 5 years, but I've created 10, 20, and 30-year plans. And as a result, I'm helping adjust the reserve line items, the costs specific to your property. And that's the key. I could look at the same damage in one location versus another location and know that this area of town has a lot softer soil than this area of town. And you don't want to use general numbers in the budget. You want to use specific numbers according to your property. So it's very important. It's a very important feature. Long-term planning is available. It is something that an expert in paving should be able to do. And all the best in reaching out to that level.
So how are you, and these are my questions, so we'll get back to the list, but how are you estimating your costs? I mean, 30 years out, how could we estimate the price of oil 30 years out? I mean, what techniques are you using? And are you working closely with the reserves analysts then? For the
Yes, the reserve analyst companies are starting to get in touch with me on a very consistent basis. That is a feature that's probably a dozen times a year. I'm working directly with someone's analyst and we're readjusting numbers. How do I calculate the future? Well, my budget planning is always planned to try to hit the expected high end. Because if I give you a budget on the high end, then when we get bid results, nobody's surprised and nobody's having to take special collections or anything like that. Secondarily, I've kind of learned the pattern, although since COVID, that got disturbed, I will admit. I'm 12 years into this service, and I used to hit it about 95% of my budgets were on target all the way into the fifth year. COVID threw that off. This year threw that off. I'm dropping down to 75. So all I can say is I track. Obviously, I get to see bids all day, every day. That's all I do, right? So I track the patterns. I ask the contractors. All the material companies know who I am in the Bay Area, and so I can call them and ask them what's up, what's coming. And for instance, in the San Francisco Bay Area, if you have a bid right now in your hand and it's not approved before July 4th, then you can expect materials to increase probably 30% after July 4th. I know that right now. Yeah.
Is there a cyclicality or seasonality for this business?
Yes. The best time to get a bid is February, March, and April for any time during that year. However, if you bid it out that early and don't do it till, like I just said, after July, they may want a materials increase. But the best time to get I'd say 50% of the companies that I know of operate in the thinking that I want to win as many bids as possible at the beginning of the year, fill up my calendar, bring on the support, and then raise my prices, and then for the rest of the year, because I've already got my backlog. And 50% of the companies operate on that cycle. Yeah.
So getting a bid later in the year, you're not doing your organization that much.
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, it's not the best time. However, then what you also get it. That's why I'm saying having somebody who can pick and choose the contractor for you. See, I'm not tied to a contractor. I pick and choose based on times of year, because there's also the companies that they're really, really good and they get booked up. And by September, you can't get them to do any work the rest of the year for you. Well, they're the companies that drop their prices in the fall because they're creating their backlog in the fall for next spring. So again, who you're going to bring to bid is a big, big deal at that point.
Yeah, it's huge. Okay, so let's go back to this slide. I appreciate that. Trying to plan on some of these costs is killing associations. It's just really a difficult thing to do. So let me see here. I think we have one from Robert Reed. Does the hotter yearly weather that we are experiencing affect the useful life of your pavement?
Yes, although the bigger factor, because we are experiencing hotter yearly to a degree, but that's a very slow process. So that in and of itself, not yet. The problem, the reason I'm still answering yes, is not the heat. It's the quality that of asphalt emulsions that California will permit. The quality of the emulsions in asphalt is 50% of what it was when I started in paving.
Okay.
50% the strength. So the life expectancy is being affected more by regulation than it is by heat. But because of that, now the heat is starting to become a factor. Our asphalt quality was so good, we could have gone up an average of 15 degrees a day and it wouldn't have done anything to that asphalt. Now that we're slowly increasing, I would say now the heat is becoming an issue, but it's really the quality of the asphalt, not the heat.
And what causes that? What's the driver?
It's an ecology decision that California, it's decreasing the potency of the crude oil. Asphalt, by the way, is the byproduct of crude oil that's made into gasoline. Asphalt is the junk, the throwaway product of the process of making gasoline.
Okay.
So that quality, they want it reduced so that it doesn't cause ecological issues as fast.
All right, I got it. So Stephen Curtis says, and program note here, I'm going to go a little while longer. I think we only need like 5 or 10 minutes to close things out. So we'll try to get to these questions. We have way too many questions, or way more questions than we can actually answer. So let's go ahead with Steve Curtis. So given that the alligator cracks have not failed and the slurry is effective and functional, what is the cost benefit analysis of fixing the alligator cracks now or later when the slurry with a slurry down the line? I think that's
Yes.
kind of a specific question, and maybe.
Yeah, it's tough to answer cost analysis benefit, because the main factor with alligatoring is if the square footage of the damaged asphalt by alligator cracking on your property is under 3%, then that's not a significant amount. And depending upon how stable those areas are, I showed you one picture of alligator cracking that was unstable and one that was stable. Slurry sealing over alligator asphalt is an option as long as you know those areas are stable and as long as you know those areas are 3% or under of your square feet. As soon as it goes to 5% or over, the 5% factor is an indicator that the general stability of the road, of the aggregate underneath, is getting compromised. 10% of your property, you have significant evidence that those areas need to be removed and that base needs to be recompacted. Even if we're talking 30 years into the life, if 10% of it is damaged, hasn't been corrected, that those areas need to be opened up, the base needs to be recompacted, and then you would put coatings over the top. Okay. So wide range answer. I apologize for that. Yeah,
we appreciate that. Suzanne asks, or Susan asks, can you mill and fill if you have a tree root issue?
Yes, you can mill and fill because it'll just strip off the root. But if you don't also remove that root, the cracking in that location is going to happen in 1 year.
Okay. All right. So Rona Gundram asks, in an area where there is snow plowing, what is the best thing to request so that the driveway doesn't get chewed up every winter?
They don't go together. Snow plowing and asphalt surfaces don't mix. I don't know any solution to that. I do live in an area where we don't have to deal with that much, but I have seen it because of East Coast visits for a specific client. there's just no the two don't mesh. Plows destroy asphalt, and that's why in the East Coast they have to pave way more often than we do in the West Coast.
Interesting. Okay. Is it okay to do the asphalt driveway first and the valley gutter drain in the future?
Tough one to answer. Typically, I guess the question is based on the valley gutter doesn't exist first. But here's what I do. Let me try it this way. If I go to assess a road, I always make sure everywhere the water is supposed to drain, A, the water gets there, and B, the valley in which it's supposed to flow is flowing correctly. Because any slowing down of the water or making it not get to where it should be or traveling where it shouldn't be is increasing the pace of damage. And so from my perspective, drainage is always tied to asphalt, and I would not put in new asphalt without already planning the drainage plan.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what do you do if the utility box, the AT&T water sewer, have sunken and are lower than the flow line? You can never get them to come out and repair. That's I guess an opinion.
Yeah.
Raise it. What do you do when you have an issue like that?
So I have some companies who are willing to do just about any utility box correction, as he's asking, raise it back to its standard or to its correct flow elevation. You have to find general engineering companies, not pavement maintenance companies. And the difference is a general engineering A license versus a C12 license. General engineering can move those boxes, C12 should not. So that's one answer. Second, all those boxes except for PG&E high voltage boxes can be adjusted by the contractor. They just don't like to. So they make an excuse and say, yeah, we can't do that. They can do it if it's written in the spec and they have a history with somebody who's, in charge of that. It can be done, and it does need to be done. So the answer to that question is PG&E high voltage boxes, or any utility if you want to do it this way, because they can come out and fix them, but you're right, they're slow to do it. You have to start talking the language that gets their attention. We have a hazardous condition, and we're concerned about someone tripping and falling and suing the HOA because of the hazard of the elevation of your utility box. Will you please come and look? You have to speak strong to get their urgent attention. That's the best advice I can get.
Okay, so we have time for one more, I think, maybe two if you go really quick. Why do we have circular cracking all around our manholes? Any spec to avoid that?
If they're very detailed, I don't know how to describe it. So you have a manhole the size of 2 feet, in circumference. If that circular crack is a specific distance away from the manhole all the way around, all you're seeing is a reflective crack of the concrete base that's holding the basin. There's concrete under the asphalt, and the asphalt's cracking at the outer edge of the rim of the concrete that's under the ground. That's probably what's being referred to. It's unavoidable, and it just needs to be maintained.
Okay, well, I'm going to leave it at that. It's now 2:20. We'll do our closure, and we'll take some more questions if we have time at the end. I apologize for leaving 37 questions unanswered here. But Rick, if you can hang around for a couple minutes, maybe we can get a couple of more of these answered. Let me go ahead and do the clausura here, and I want to say thank you to everyone for participating today. We always appreciate having you as part of our program. And so thank you to the ECHO members for coming and supporting our ongoing ECHO webinars. For those of you who are not ECHO members, please consider becoming a member and supporting our association, and which is really your association. So please ask people to join if they aren't, and if you're not a member, please do so. We need the support, and we will continue to do programming such as this that's useful to you, the homeowner, and the board of directors. For ECHO members, thank you for supporting us. Simple invitation is all you need to do, is to get others to join. If you'd like to become involved with ECHO, we have a few opportunities for you. Please refer to the slide. If you see anything that looks interesting, please send me an email at dzapponi@echo-ca.org. I see we have Suzanne and Kay Dyack. They'll be on this call. They'll be helping out with the San Jose Northern California Educational Seminar on Saturday at the Villages in San Jose. Now, for our other announcements, this year, ECHO is launching a new educational program focused on HOA board preparedness. The core curriculum of 10 courses is designed for high-quality training and is available to HOA board members, interested homeowners, and professionals. Your participation in this program will earn you a certificate of HOA board member preparedness. The courses will be initially be offered live via webinar, with 8 of 10 courses recorded. And if you miss a live program, the course will be offered on demand as a recording. If you or someone you know wants to enroll in the certificate program, please contact Connor Zapponi at his email address. He'll set you up. His email address is on the screen. And so thank you for that, Connor. Our 2024 resource panels have begun, and we are in the summer. A slower session for us. We will be coming back to the Wine Country, North Bay, San Francisco panels on September 10 and 1st. We look forward to seeing you there. Those are smaller, interactive board member conversations with our vendors and other professionals. ECHO is also planning 3 larger events this year. I mentioned one coming up on Saturday. We'll be hosting Getting Things Done in the HOA at the Villages in San Jose. We're featuring Senator Cortese there. He'll be talking about housing in the state of California, and we have Cal Fire, and I understand that might be a really interesting conversation about hardening your communities and helping to build your communities to be prepared for wildfires. And if you can do some of the programs that they're proposing, you may be able to maintain your insurance and keep your prices down. So come on to that. It's this Saturday at doors open at 8:30. We start the program at 9:15. Senator Cortese is our keynote at 9:30, and Cal Fire is at 10. So we hope to see you there. Food has been prepared, and we'd love to see you. Once again, thank you to all of our sponsors for making this educational seminar possible, and thank you to Rick for coming today and being such a great sport about roads and helping us with that. And of course, thanks to all of you for attending today and making this a successful event.